going to talk through a particular framework. It's called the participation stages, or stages of participation framework. It's kind of an adaptation of different bits of psychology. In particular, you might think about Maslow's hierarchy. That's the picture at the bottom there, where you need to satisfy bottom needs, like physiological needs, and then you work your way up. So it's that kind of hierarchy. But it's also linked to something called the stages of change framework, which comes from motivational psychology, about how do you actually get someone to change and grow in response to barriers and setbacks. So what we're going to do for the rest of this session, we have 2 case studies we're going to look at with respect to the framework that Joe's going to introduce on the next slide. We're definitely going to talk through one case study in a breakout room, discuss and link back. And if there's time, there's the second one as well. But yes, hold in mind, it's a hierarchy. It's about getting a shared goal. And to do that, we need to think, what stage is the young person at as they currently present? And what's the next stage? That's the goal we can work to. But I'll let Joe explain though.
Thanks, Dave. So we're going to think about this bottom up. So thinking about safety stage first, and we've named these stages of participation after what we are hoping that the young person will feel, or what we feel that they need, what we feel that they're going to get out of that particular stage and way of working. And we've put this together to hopefully help either when we're working individually with children, young people and families, but also when we're working together as a system to help some of that curiosity, to help us direct it to a really helpful place to begin with, because often finding that starting point can be really tricky, but also to kind of point us to the best ways that we can be working together in partnership as well. And I think as you said, Dave, it is a hierarchy, but I think each stage kind of underpins the next, and we really need to recognise that they need to be maintained as well, to therefore be able to sort of support the next stage. So even for a young person working at the collaborative stage, they need to have those feelings of safety still well and truly firmly in place in order to continue that progression. So I will give a bit of an overview of each of these stages, and then I think we'll go on and have a look at some case studies. So for a young person in the safety stage, they're often needing to feel just that. We might use this stage to describe young people who may be finding it really difficult to leave their room, or finding it difficult to leave their home. They may, for example, be struggling with kind of daily self-care. They might be struggling to have daily kind of interactions with family members or with friends, and may be described as really kind of quite withdrawn. So they're almost quite self-protecting, have made their world quite small, and might not be able to participate in what we might think of as those kind of day-to-day tasks. And so for a young person in this stage, it's really important when we're thinking about that shared understanding and those shared goals that we're not actually thinking about strategies to get them back into school, because we need to think first of all about how they can feel safe and rebuild trust within their home and within their very local environment. I think some of the families that we work with, and certainly what I experienced, as parents and carers, we're doing what we can and what we feel is best to try to get our child back into school, or to try to get our child to go to school. And sometimes when we're not working with that kind of measure of compassion and curiosity and partnership, that can actually result in feeling quite traumatizing for the young person at times. So sometimes the relationship even between parent, carer and young person can break down to a point, and there needs to be a bit of rebuilding of trust within that relationship before we can sort of think about asking that young person to step out of that. So those are the kind of things that we're really thinking about working at this stage, to kind of form the foundations that the young person can then move forward and start increasing their participation and engagement from. Then we start to see young people as they are experiencing more feelings of safety and they are rebuilding that trust, that they start to be able to participate in a little bit more, usually in and around the home first, and within their local environment. And it might not be that they necessarily are wanting to do those things yet, but that actually some of those things can be built out of habits and can be built out of routine. And in our extended training, I'll talk a lot about building routines and habits, because they are things that can be built on, and they are things that can lead on to other types of participation. And I know when we start to talk about the case study, that we'll look at the different some different examples of that. But really now we're talking about a young person who's maybe able to go out in their garden, they're able to kick a football around, walk the dog, participate in meal times, watch TV with the family, those kinds of day-to-day activities that we might hope to see. So the young person's remembering that actually it is okay to interact, it is okay to connect, and it is okay to do things, and they feel safe to do that because the demands that are coming out of those activities are copable with. They're within a kind of manageable parameter as such. Then we think about young people who are participating in those day-to-day tasks and day-to-day experiences, and because they're feeling safer, they're feeling a little bit more resilient, they start to demonstrate a little bit more motivation to actually want to do something more. That might mean that they want to do something more regularly, or they want to take something a step further, maybe out of their local environment. They want to see friends. And sometimes they have a very helpful feeling of feeling a bit bored, which actually shows that they're ready for change and they want something to be different. And I think we talk about this as being really quite a key time, don't we, Dave, in terms of maintaining that trust, because the young person is just starting to kind of branch out of what they've kept as their sort of comfort zone and their self-protecting zone as such, and are starting to dip their toe in the water and try other things and feel brave enough to try other things. Key time for building connections and relationships with schools. And others that might be able to support the young person, but also really key time to keep things slow and steady, so that we're not running before we can walk, and that progress can be maintained. From there, we see that young people can start to collaborate. They're feeling like they can have much more autonomy over their own change. They can actually make much more suggestions about what those changes might be and what that progress might look like. They might be able to manage a bit of unexpected change because they're feeling more resilient and generally feeling safer, and have built up more trust and meaningful relationships within their settings. So generally, people at this stage, young people at this stage, we are thinking that they are engaging in education, but we're really keen to kind of use these stages to describe multiple situations, because for some young people that will be attending a mainstream school. For other young people it might be attending a specialist setting or an alternative provision, or their education might look quite different. So it's just that young person is able to collaborate, drive their own change, drive their own progress within whichever setting they're in. And the same goes for that inclusion stage at the top. That's really thinking about a young person where we're now able to access the setting, whichever setting that is for them, and we're able to think about reasonable adjustments and adaptations. So we've got a clear idea of what it is that young person needs to be able to learn, to be able to participate in their education, and be able to put those adaptations in place. So that's where our usual inclusive practices would be more likely to then take over. Anything that you want to add to that, Dave?
Yeah, I just wanted to link it back to our kind of key words and best practice. For me, in my experience of this kind of work with homes and schools, two main problems that I think, I'm obviously biased, but I think the participation stages helps address. First kind of problem is, so often there are mismatched goals, and therefore disagreement around what to do. I think framework like this, participation stages, gives you a shared language, home and school and professional and young person in some cases, to speak about, okay, what stage is young person at, and therefore what type of activities or interventions are helpful. So that helps address a problem of mismatched goals and expectations. And it can be really dangerous when you come in with a goal around inclusion when a young person's actually at a safety stage. That will just lead to experiences of trying and failing, which then diminish hope and that kind of capacity for partnership working. The second problem, I think this is a solution to, is just that idea of maintaining hope, but also having some accountability. Understandably, it can be a bit worrying as a school, as an inclusion service, as a professional, to not feel like there's enough progress being made at a pace that feels okay. Although we need to be mindful that's a externally set goal, that's someone else's need. I think this helps with that a little bit because you can speak to, okay, we have a young person at the participation stage, we're following best practice for this stage, and you'll be able to show and evidence progression into the motivation stage at some point. So it just kind of breaks down what is in reality a massive achievement. Going from not participating in life or home routines to school is a very long journey with many ups and downs. And this helps appreciate and celebrate significant progress on the way to that, going from the bedroom to home routines, or home routines to being motivated for change outside of the house and participation in previously enjoyed activities, for example. And you can demonstrate that progress against a framework like this, using shared language and maintaining some hope, because you're actually seeing what we think is our kind of practice-based experience of progression. Does that sound okay, Joe?
Yeah, no, that's really helpful, Dave. Thank you. Yeah, because I was just thinking for me, when we start working with families, there's two, just thinking back to the curiosity aspect, there's being curious around the things that may have led to the emotional based school non-attendance in the first place, and there's being curious around what the young person needs now. And maybe when a young person is in that kind of collaborative inclusion stage, the answers to those things might be a little bit more similar. Whereas if you've got a young person who's more at the sort of participation safety stage, what led to the EBSNA, so being curious around what they needed and actually what they need now, could be quite different. So it's helpful to think about both of those things.